Welcome. I'm Joan Brueggemann, a member of the MSU College of Nursing Alumni Board. It's my pleasure to moderate this broadcast of Conversations, a series of webinars sponsored by the college. The topic of today's webinar is Pivoting Your Nursing Career and will be presented by Shelly Martin, a 1996 BSN graduate. Let me begin with the provider disclosure statement. Our speaker attests that no financial relationship exists between herself and any commercial supporting entity which would represent a conflict of interest or commercialize any presentation content. There are no CEUs available for today's presentation. And now I'd like you to meet the presenter. Shelly Martin has used her nursing skills and education to excel in the world of business. As the president of OptumCare Network of Utah, Shelly oversees care delivery for over 60,000 older adults and leads a team of over 150 doctors, nurses, and other care practitioners. Under Shelly's leadership, OptumCare Network of Utah helps enhance patient care by coordinating care across the continuum, including primary and specialty care, urgent care, and more complex care for patients in hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, and home settings. I encourage everyone to type their questions into the Q&A box throughout the presentation. There will be time for questions and answers at the end after Shelly finishes her presentation. Welcome, Shelly, and now over to you.
Thank you so much. So let me first say that I'm truly honored to be here. I live in Salt Lake City, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But I'm a Spartan for life, and feel very, very honored to be here talking to students, faculty, alumni. Michigan State is truly an incredible school, and I feel really, again, very proud to be an alumni and to have the opportunity to speak to you. So, Marco, let's jump into the next slide. And let me first tell you just a little bit about who I am. And I love doing this so that you get a sense of not just who I am at work, but who I am outside of work. So I'll tell you that top middle picture is me with my husband and 4 children. Like I said, we live in Salt Lake City, Utah. We're actually sitting on the stairs of our home right there. I shared with you that I have 4 children. My oldest is Emma. She's 20. And she is actually studying a weird mix of physics and graphic design at the University of Utah. And then there's my son, Liam, who is 18 years old, and he's actually getting his engineering design certificate and will be actually starting his general education classes likely this spring. And then my next daughter is Rachel, and she is a freshman in high school, loves to play volleyball. She's 14 years old. And then my youngest is Rebecca, and she's 13 years old. She's in 7th grade, and she loves to play volleyball as well. So that's my family. You can see to the right is that Spartan for life. And it's true. My husband and I and my brother-in-law and his wife actually come out every homecoming game to root for the Spartans. And my husband actually went to UNLV, but he has a shirt that has a big S on it. And it says, "I married into this." And he's probably as big of a Spartan fan as I am. And then to the left of that family picture, or my left of that family picture, is actually me. One of the things I love to do is run. And that was actually in 2016 when I finished the Dopey Challenge, which is a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, and a full marathon through the Disney World parks all in 1 week. And so, or in 4 days, right? It's one 5K, 10K, half marathon, and then the full. I tell people that I run to burn off the crazy. I have a lot of energy, and running is really it's really what I would say is my meditation time. And then below that are my 2 dogs. So the goofy one on the left, her name is Freya. She's almost a year-old Alaskan Malamute. And she is a goofy 85 pounds and has no idea how big she is. And then to the right is my almost 2-year-old Doberman. Her name is Valkyrie. And she is quite literally, but not officially, my therapy dog. She is always near me. And she's a wonderful, wonderful pet. And then that next picture is my team, my current team, actually up in Park Park City. They're my second family. That's why they made this picture. And then that last picture on the right was, I think that was in 2018 when I ran the Princess Challenge, which is a 10K and a half marathon, again at Disney World Park. So this is who I am. And I will tell you that this is the slide that I share anytime I speak, whether it be internally or externally. So everybody knows I'm a Spartan for life. I truly do bleed green. So let me first start, after sharing with you who I am. You can actually go back to that slide, Marco, thank you. I want to tell you a little bit about why I chose to study nursing at Michigan State University. So I wanted to be a nurse because as a kid, I was sick. I wanted to work in healthcare. I actually, when I was age 6 or 7, I had a status asthmaticus event, and I was actually hospitalized for 7 days and couldn't breathe on my own. And despite my parents being by my side the whole way, I felt incredibly comforted by the physicians and the nurses in the pediatric unit at Crittenton Hospital is actually where I went. And so I knew that at that moment, as I went through that trial in my life, even at a very young age, that I wanted to do something like that. I wanted to be a hero like those doctors and nurses. So I graduated from high school. I got accepted into University of Michigan and Michigan State, and what did I choose? Michigan State, the better of those schools. I'm totally teasing, right? You can't be a Spartan and not give University of Michigan some flack. So I actually started pre-med and got about through the first semester at Michigan State and started to get worried, not so much that the classes were hard, but that I wouldn't have an opportunity to raise a family. And that was mostly because what you'll learn about me as we walk through these next few slides is that I'm either all in or I'm all out. And when I'm all in, I'm all in. And I was worried that I wouldn't be able to be a great doctor and a great mom and wife. And so as I thought about what might be a good career for me, I knew it had to be healthcare. And I decided that I thought with nursing, that could give me the flexibility to still be a mom and also have a career. And so I changed my major to nursing. And sometimes I wonder, if somebody paid the College of Nursing to get me in. My grades were great, but well, they weren't great. They were good. But really, I think what got me into the program was all of my elective classes were things like inorganic chemistry, calculus 2, very, very difficult classes that I did fairly well in. So they were heavily weighted. But so that is why I ended up, or how I ended up in nursing school, how I had chosen to be a nurse. And as I got into the program, there were a couple of experiences that really changed my whole perspective on nursing and made me really recognize what I wanted to do. And that first thing was my leadership rotation at Michigan State University. So I had the opportunity to shadow the director of the Michigan Nurses Association. And I will tell you that I knew from like I told you, 6 or 7 years of age, that I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be a hero. I knew that I wanted to help people change their lives. I wanted to help people. I wanted to make a difference in people's lives. And I saw another side of nursing within that rotation. I saw this business side of nursing where you could really impact the legislative process. And what I recognized is that most of the world doesn't really understand what nurses do. And so I just really felt changed and knew that I wanted to do something like that as I matured in my nursing career. So as you heard, I am currently serving as the president of Optum, or OptumCare Network of Utah, and that we take care of 60,000 United Medicare Advantage lives here in Salt Lake City. So just to give you some context around that, I was the first hire, and with a talented team of people, we grew the market to 2 times its original size. So when we started out, it was about 39,000 lives. And then just prior to a split, and it's confusing, so I won't go into why, but we were managing 82,000 lives. And so it was an incredible growth trajectory, and it has been a great journey. But what we were able to do, the reason OptumCare was brought into the market was because there was an imbalance between the revenue and the expenses. And so we were able to resolve that imbalance in a very short period of time. So you understand a little bit where my future is in less than a week. Actually, I will say on Monday, I will be starting as the Chief Operating Officer at USMM, or US Medical Management, which you may or may not know if you've heard that name, is based out of Troy, Michigan. And that organization was recently acquired by a private equity venture. And they came looking for me. I have spent 8 incredible years at Optum and really wasn't looking. But the team, the organization, the private equity firm kind of found me as a needle in the haystack and offered me something that I just couldn't turn down. So if you're not familiar with US Medical Management, what they do is home-based primary care for the most frail, elderly, complex patients in 11 states and 30 markets. And in addition, in most of those markets, there is a home health business and a hospice business. And so I will have the privilege, starting on Monday, to lead that team, to grow that business, to make that business even more effective than it is today. So that's a little bit about who I am, why I chose to be a nurse. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I've been and what my history has looked like. So Mark, you can go to the next slide for me. So I have done a whole bunch of different things in healthcare, in nursing, if you will. And I let me just also say that I do still, and I should, if I were sitting in my home office, I would have a copy of it, but I still do have a license to practice nursing in the state of Utah. I have never let that go. I've been licensed in multiple states, and I'm not sure that I ever can let it go. The roles that I have had, probably my new role next week, and the role that I've had for the last 8 years, being a nurse was not part of the job requirement. But I will tell you, and hopefully what you'll learn throughout this next period of time, is that it is truly what has propelled me to the top of my game, is that Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. So to give you some understanding of where I've come from, so I very early on out of nursing school, and actually while I was in nursing school, I worked for a health plan and I did inpatient case management. I then very quickly transitioned into quality improvement. We call that STARS now, Medicare STARS on the Medicare side. And then I spent some time on the IT side. I was a product manager, and what I would do is I would translate between the clinicians who were the customers to the coders, or the developers, if you will, what we were trying to accomplish and what our customers wanted, and then translate back from a development perspective back to our clients. I have had the opportunity to lead an inpatient hospitalist program in Las Vegas. I've worked very closely with medical groups who have taken risk and who are delegated for utilization management, prior authorization, case management. I've had the opportunity to make sure that they are meeting the standards that Medicare requires, and work very closely with those medical groups if they weren't meeting those standards. And then I started to really expand my horizons into provider operations. And I had the opportunity to build relationships with primary care providers and specialty providers to help support them in their endeavor in taking care of our patients. And that was really insightful for me. Working for so long on the health plan side, and then having this direct connection with providers, with physicians and advanced practice clinicians, was for me really rewarding. And what I learned was that I had this great ability to build relationships. And I will draw the reason why I think that relationship building was very successful for me, was really what I learned in nursing school. You know, as nurses, as clinicians, we're taking care of patients at their worst, at their most vulnerable. And I shouldn't say at their worst, at their most vulnerable. That's a better way to put it. And they can be grumpy, they can be mean, they can be extremely concerned or scared. And sometimes, right, as they get better, they're even happy. But being able to manage all of those emotions and to work with patients when they may not be at their best truly allowed me to, I think, manage through conflict better. And I also think being a registered nurse, being a nurse, bachelor's of science in nursing, having a bachelor's of science in nursing, working with physicians allows you, it gives you that trust, right? I think if you look at all of the data, it ultimately says that nurses are some of the most trusted professionals in the whole world, right? Because as I say, oftentimes, I don't know one nurse that I've ever met in my entire life that went to nursing school to be rich. Generally, nurses go to school because they want to help people, and that's seen and very clearly respected in the community, in the markets, in the world. And I think that it's those things that helped me to really be able to build relationships with other people. After that, I had the most incredible opportunity to build or actually lead a primary care division in Las Vegas with Healthcare Partners Medical Group. And I will tell you that I was sure when I started that role as a VP of operations that I knew everything there was to know about primary care medicine and how to run a primary care practice. I had 32 clinics and 150 primary care providers. And I'll tell you, within 2 hours on my first day, I learned that I didn't know a darn thing about primary care operations, and I had an incredibly steep learning curve. And then after that, I did that for about 2 years. And then after that, I got recruited in Las Vegas to relocate to Salt Lake City, because the Salt Lake City market, as I shared with you, had this imbalance with United Health Group, also called OptumCare Network of Utah, had this imbalance between their revenue, right, the money that was coming in, and then the expenses. And they needed somebody to come in and ultimately save the market, because United Healthcare was considering leaving the market just because it wasn't making sense for them to be there. And so it was a last ditch effort. I was the first hire. I was the first employee. And I'll tell you, my first week in Salt Lake was, I can't tell you how many times in my head in that first week, I thought, what in the heck were these people thinking hiring me? I have no idea what I'm doing. And I will tell you, 8 years later, not only has United Healthcare stayed in the marketplace, but they've grown ×2. And we have a team, as I think Joan shared with you, we have a team of about 150 or more people with all kinds of physicians, advanced practice clinicians, pharmacists, nurses, physician relationship professionals, just an incredible diverse group of people who together have turned this market from a last ditch effort to an incredible success. And I will tell you that as I've left, one of the things that I consistently, or as I'm preparing to leave, one of the things I consistently hear is that the Utah market is a market that stands out above all the other markets because of the innovation and because of the constant focus around patients and providers, which really are our two customers in this business. And so it's been quite a humbling experience, I would say, the last couple of weeks, as people are hearing that I'm leaving. And I will tell you, the last 8 years has been a really wonderful journey for me, where I've learned even more about business and have grown just as an individual and as a nurse. And then I shared with you that my next journey, starting on Monday, as Chief Operating Officer, and walking into an organization that has a structure and has leaders, and really looking forward to digging into that business and understanding where we need to go from here. And somewhere in between that, all of that work experience that I just walked you through, I got my master's degree. It was actually pretty early on. I got a master's in science and health services administration. In fact, I was pregnant with my first daughter, and I was really grateful to a nurse leader in my life who said, you know, you need to get your master's degree sooner rather than later, because, you know, once you start having babies, you are not going to want to go back to school. And I was so grateful for that prompting, because I then spent the next 2 years working on my master's degree. And I'm not kidding, I graduated a week from a week before I had my first baby. And I always thought I'd go back to school, maybe get my Juris Doctorate. And I will tell you that that nurse leader was right on. After having 4 babies, and my youngest is 13, there is, while I love to learn, I'm not sure that I want to go back to school at this point. So all of you that have had, that maybe in the midst of your nursing career or your nursing education, and you're older, you're not the traditional student, hats off to you, because I can't imagine doing all of the things that are required to be a mom, a professional, and a student. So my respect goes out to you. So Marco, if you want to go to the next slide for me. So how did I get here? And this is a long list of things that I will try to dive into for you. So first and foremost, it's incredible leaders and mentors. So people who are willing to give me stuff that stretched me way beyond my comfort zone. People who are willing to give me the opportunity to learn and to also fail. And I think it's really important as nurses that when you find somebody that inspires you, or when you find somebody that you want to be like, to first of all, let them know, right? And second of all, ask if they would be willing to be your mentor. Because had I not had those relationships in my life, and those people willing to mentor me and teach me, there's no way I would be where I'm at today. The second thing is being curious. So I already shared with you, I love to learn constantly. I'm always looking for new ways to learn and new things to learn, but also making sure that those that were leading me and managing me knew that I wanted to take on new responsibilities, that I got bored easy. And I do get bored very, very easily, and need lots of different things to sort of keep my attention and to keep me engaged. The third thing is probably not so much not being afraid to fail, because I'm not gonna lie, I don't like failure. I probably still would say that I'm afraid to fail, but I think it's better. I probably should have said, instead of not afraid to fail, is being willing to take a risk, knowing that I might fail. So when I moved to Salt Lake City, I moved my husband and my 4 children, and all of our family lived in Las Vegas. And that was a huge risk, right? It was for a Fortune 5 company. I guess they weren't Fortune 5 at the time, 8 years ago, but they're Fortune 5 now. So I knew that the cash, right, the business would be there, but it's still, and I will tell you, in the first 3 years, I wasn't sure if I was going to be around in 4 or 5 years. So it's that willingness to take a risk, and recognizing that that may lead to failure, but that if I failed, I would get back up, and I would just get right back. I would just get right back on the wagon and figure it out. And then I think I already kind of mentioned this when I talked about incredible leaders, but I think it's communication. I let anybody and everybody know that I was that was a leader, or again, that I felt was incredible and inspiring. I talked to them, and I asked them questions, and I communicated with them that I was interested in growing and learning more. And is there some way that they could help me, whether it was to mentor with me or to teach me more about things that I didn't know? And I'll give you an example. So I've always loved math. I know I'm weird. If you haven't thought I was weird up to this point, you think I'm really weird now. I've always loved math. I loved calculus. I loved calculus and calculus 2. But as I got deeper into the business side of healthcare, reading a profit and loss statement, I had no idea what I was looking at. For me, it was like looking at another language. And so I've asked throughout my career, even when I came to Optum in the last 8 years, as the president of the market, my finance leader to mentor me and to guide me and to educate me, being willing to admit my weaknesses and then allowing other people to make those weaknesses strengths. And then again, I think I've already touched on this too, the willingness to try new things. Don't ever be afraid to try new things. New things are what grow us and stretch us out of our comfort zone. And when people see us trying new things, they keep giving us more. And that's really, again, goes back to those incredible leaders. And then I will just say, there are times, and one of my colleagues from Optum may or may not be on, but I will tell you that sometimes, given that I've spent a lot of time away from nursing, not in the actual practice of nursing, meaning bedside care, sometimes my chief medical officer tells me I'm nurse-ish. And if Cody's on, he's rolling his eyes right now. But what I will tell you is, despite the fact that I would not encourage anybody to let me take care of anybody that they love from a direct patient care perspective, bedside nursing, I have never forgotten what Michigan State taught me around nursing advocacy. And I will tell you that I think, and I've touched on this, that this is what makes us special. This is what makes us critical to the overall healthcare environment in today's world. In business, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. When you are in a for-profit business, organizations need to make money. And I'm going to tell you, in my 25 plus years of practice, I have never once experienced an organization that I've worked for trying to short a patient, if you will, or not provide them the care that they deserve. But what I will say is really, really critical is sometimes a lot of times it's really important for business people to understand, to walk a mile in the shoes of the patients that they serve. And who better to do that than a nurse? That's what we are born and bred to do, in my opinion. It is absolutely critical in the healthcare environment today. The next thing is relationship building, and I won't go into that a lot. I already shared a lot about relationship building, but relationships are key. Relationships are key when you have an incredible leader that you want to mentor you. Relationships are key with patients and providers. Relationships, if you don't know how to build a relationship, then I would encourage you to dive into it and to figure out, how do you build trust and alignment and create long-lasting relationships with professionals, in your work, or just professionals that you run into in healthcare. One of the last things I'll tell you about is achievement drive. So I often say the good and the bad is that I'm an achiever. I've been an achiever for as long as I can remember. And the good in that is I've accomplished so many great things with so many great people. And I look back on the 25 plus years of my career and really proud of what I've been able to accomplish. The bad in that, though, is that sometimes other things have suffered. I will tell you, my family is incredibly supportive. My husband is the most amazing stay-home dad and husband, supports me like you wouldn't believe. But sometimes they get put on the back burner, and that's probably being a little rough around the edges. I'm not sure that it's the back burner, but an example, we'll go to Disney. We're huge Disney. You probably figured that out already by my pictures and running around Disney World. But we'll be in line at a Disney ride and we're on vacation, and what's mom doing? Checking her emails, and they have to tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey mom, be here now." And they know that, that's language within the United Health Group culture, which is being mindful and present in the moment instead of caught up in work. And so I'll shut my phone down and put it in my back pocket and, re-engage. And so that's the good and bad about achievement drive. And then I think the last thing, and I added this actually at the last minute, was really understanding how to motivate clinicians, because I am one. And that I think clinicians aren't always, whether you're talking about providers or nurses, they're not always the easiest people to lead. And that's for, right, a whole host of reasons. And so understanding how to motivate clinicians and how to engage with clinicians, I think has helped me, truly helped me. So that's how I kind of got where I'm at. I want to jump into really kind of quickly, and I'm looking at the time, and I've got about 15 more minutes, and I was worried I wasn't going to have enough time. But I want to jump into, so this concept that I've had, as I've reflected on my nursing career, oftentimes people have said to me, knowing what you know now, if you could go back, I don't know how many years it's been since 1996 or 1991 actually was when I started at Michigan State University. Would I change my major to business or something different in healthcare? And my answer is an emphatic, absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. Being a nurse and writing 150 million nursing care plans at Michigan State University prepared me to write a business plan. And I want to walk you through that right now, because when I say that oftentimes to clinicians, they're like, what are you talking about? And then they think about it and they go, oh my gosh, you're right. So Marco, if you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to walk you quickly through the purposes of a nursing care plan. And right, so this isn't from Shelly's brain. I put the link where I got it from, because I wanted to make sure you understood, when, as I crosswalked these two, that this didn't come from my head, that I crosswalked these. I literally took this stuff from the internet. And again, that's the annotation on the bottom there. So the purposes of a nursing care plan, and you guys know this, right? It defines the nurse's role. It provides direction for individualized care of the patient. It provides for continuity of care. It allows for documentation, right? So when you have shift change and a new nurse or a new healthcare professional, they know what's been going on with the patient. It serves as a guide for assigning a specific staff to a specific client, right? So maybe there's a nurse who has a tremendous amount of experience in cardiovascular medicine, and this patient is post-MI. Maybe you want to give that patient to that nurse. It also serves as a guide for reimbursement. And while being a nurse and bedside nurse, we probably don't love to think about reimbursement, it is something that we need to consistently figure out, because whether you work for a for-profit or not-for-profit, everything costs something. And the other reality is, right, is that the United States has the most costly healthcare in the world, and we have got to figure out how to get our arms around that. But that's another talk. That's not today's talk. And then the last thing is it defines clients' goals. So it not only benefits the nurse, but it also helps to engage the client or the patient by involving them in their own treatment and care. So Marco, if you want to go to the next slide. So again, this is a slide that I took right off the internet. This was actually a student nursing care plan. And I just want you to, not necessarily what's in that care plan, but the columns, right? So there's the nursing assessment, there's the nursing diagnosis, there's the outcomes, the interventions, the rationale, and then ultimately the evaluation. So now I want to take you to the next slide, and we'll go back to that slide in a little bit. And I want to just walk you through the purposes of a business plan, right? So there's the market analysis, which is really gathering information about factors and conditions that ultimately affect our industry, whatever you're talking about, whether it's healthcare, whether it's retail, whatever it is. Then there's a competitive analysis, and that's evaluating the strengths and weaknesses of our competitors. Customer segregation, so dividing our customers into groups, marketing for advertising, logistics and operations, and then cash flow, right? Being prepared for how much money needs to go in and out of the business, and then an overall path to long-term growth. So let's go to the next slide, Marco. And this is actually a screenshot, and it's stretched out of part of my 2022 business plan for OptumCare Network of Utah. And you can see we've got what our priorities are, what our initiatives are, what our goals and metrics are, and then who is ultimately going to be accountable. So Marco, let's go to the next slide. And now what I want to do is I want to crosswalk these two things. And you can see on the left, I have the purposes of the nursing care plan, and then the purposes of the business plan. I'm going to crosswalk those. So the first is, in the nursing care plan, it's a guide for reimbursement. So the medical record, right, is used by insurance companies sometimes to ensure that what care was provided. Whereas cash flow projections are about how much cash has to flow in and out of the business, right? So those two things are really closely tied. Business plan, nursing care plan. The next section is on the nursing care plan. It's direction for individualized patients, right? So how do we critically think about each client and develop interventions specifically for them? Well, when you think about marketing, marketing is about thinking about how our business and our particular market, how we advertise and gain the business that we need. The third component is defining client goals in a nursing plan. So it not only benefits nurses, but also clients by involving them in their own treatment and care. And then we can compare that to a competitive analysis, right? I'm going to evaluate my market, the uniqueness of my market, the strengths and weaknesses of my competitors, and I'm going to create, right? Through that, it's going to help me to create a plan on how to beat my competitors. The next piece is continuity of care, and then that overall path to growth. And continuity of care, right, is really about thinking, how is this patient going to move through their care journey, their episode of care in the hospital, in the skilled nursing facility, in the home health, and then potentially, right, home health at home and any durable medical equipment they may need. Whereas an overall path, right, you're doing the same thing in a business plan. Long term, in this episode, what are we going to do in order to make sure we achieve long-term growth? The next component in the purpose of a nursing care plan is the nurse's role. So the nurse's role helps us to identify the unique role that we will play as nurses in the overall health and well-being of our clients without having to entirely rely on a physician order or physician intervention. Whereas a market analysis is really about gathering information about factors and conditions that affect the industry, right? So again, comparisons there. It defines our role, and market analysis does the same thing with a business plan. In a business plan, I'm going to define what the market analysis is so that I can identify the unique role that my business will have. The next component is documentation, and I compare that to logistics and operational plans. It's all about planning and executing on the most efficient processes. And that's what documentation is all about, right? Documenting what has happened, and then helping to create that critical thinking on where we need to go from here. And then the last component is specific staff to specific clients. So instances when clients' care needs to be assigned to a staff with particular and precise skills. We talked about that. And then that compares to customer segmentation in the purpose of a business plan, which is dividing your customers into different groups based upon their specific characteristics to improve the overall performance of the business. So let's go one more time, Marco, to the next slide. And this is already what I showed you. And I would imagine now that we've walked through that crosswalk, you're looking at a nursing care plan through a different lens. And now you're seeing how close a care plan is to a business plan. Let's go to the next slide. So as I've grown up in business, one of the things we talk about all the time is SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. I don't need to dive into this because you all know this. A nursing care plan is a SMART goal. It is a SMART plan filled with SMART goals. This is what we do every day. And these SMART goals are what business constantly is referring to. So let's go to the next slide and talk a little bit about the nursing shortage. So I won't spend a ton of time on this, but I got to get on my soapbox here. And some of you may be thinking, well, if we all go into business, there'll be an even more of a nursing shortage. And I don't disagree with you, but we know that the nursing shortage that is occurring, right, is because demand is on the rise. Nurses are retiring, especially through COVID. there are the rural parts of our country are even more, there's even more of a shortage. There's not enough educators. It's not, being a nurse is not an easy job. There's a lot of stress. But I'm also going to tell you that I think that part of the nursing shortage is showing the world who we really are. And sometimes as nurses, I can tell you, people will ask me what I do. And the first thing I say is, I'm a nurse. And the first question out of their mouth is, what hospital do you work in? And I'm like, I don't work in a hospital. Nobody wants me to work in a hospital. I would kill people unintentionally. And then I take the time to explain how nursing relates to what I do today and how diverse the career is and how incredible the career is. And so I think it's really important that we show the world who we are, that we demonstrate how versatile nursing can be. And then the last thing, I remember hearing a lot in my early years in nursing, that nurses tend to eat their young. And I can tell you that I don't know that I've ever experienced that in my career. The reason why I am where I am is not just because of business mentors, but because of incredible nursing mentors. But we need to be encouraging the next generation, our sons and daughters, to go into nursing. It is an incredible, versatile, honorable career. It's not just a vocation. And I think it's really critical that we get our voice out there. So I think I'm probably maybe ending just right on time. If you want to go to the next slide, Marco, I couldn't end a presentation to a bunch of Spartans without this. We are Spartans, and Spartans will. We will achieve, we will accomplish. And on top of being Spartans, we're nurses. And so we are superhuman, in my opinion. So I just want to say thank you for attending. Thanks for letting me. I'm honored again that I had the opportunity to speak with you today. Again, Spartan for life. I bleed green. I'm so proud of my Michigan State University connection. I'm proud to be an alumni. And I'm proud of you and all that you have accomplished as Spartan nurses.
Shelly, thank you so much for your interesting and insightful presentation. We have a question in the chat box, and I'll go ahead and read that for you. And how well did your master's degree prepare you for the roles you would have in business? Knowing what you now know about business and the roles you would have, would you have still gotten that master's degree, or would you have gotten more of a degree like an MBA?
That's a really great question. I will say that, so my master's in health administration, there are often times where I've gone back and forth of, should I go back and get my MBA and be dual masters? And I've already told you the answer to that question. There's too much on my plate at this point in time to get another degree. But I will say that and I will also say that my master's program was not, it was one of those programs. It wasn't University of Phoenix, but I think I use that because everybody knows it was one of those programs that while you're employed full time, you can also get your master's degree. And what I will tell you is, I'm really grateful that I did it that way, that I didn't take a leave of absence, if you will, from a job and solely focus on my school. What I found was we would dive into some really complex healthcare administration topics that maybe I didn't know a lot about. And then literally the next day in my job, I was applying the things that I learned. And again, my program was a great program, but I got a 4.0. That was every single class. I got a 4.0, and it wasn't incredibly difficult. Now I'm not saying it was easy either. It was a lot of time. It was a lot of study, and being older, 2 or 3 years, right? Michigan State prepared me to be a master's student, and so. I would say that health administration, I think it prepared me very, very well. I think it really is not so much about the degree that you attain in a master's program, but the way that you apply the learning. And again, I would say that my program, again, really allowed me to take these difficult concepts and literally apply them the next day. And I just felt like that helped me retain the information that I learned, and it helped me to grow. So, I think whether it was in health administration or whether it was in business, I don't ultimately think that mattered. And I think that probably most of my leaders would tell you, regardless of what my master's degree was, that I have been able to excel in business without an MBA.
Thank you, Shelly. I have a question for you. Of your career, because you have quite a diverse career, what would you say was some of the things that impacted your journey along the way that were most impactful to where you are now?
So that's a great question as well. I will tell you that I will never forget it was probably, well, it was very early on in my career. I'm trying to think, it was probably in the first 5 years. And I remember at the time I was a director of medical management. I was leading the case management, the utilization management team. I was really young, and I was working for a very, very small health plan, and it was in Las Vegas. In fact, it is a health plan no more. They predominantly worked on the Medicaid side and then on the commercial side, so the employer side, and it was really, really small. And again, just remind you that this was 25 plus years ago, probably 20 to 25 years ago. And at that time, in that employer health plan, in the benefits, there were some transplants that were still considered experimental, because there hadn't been a ton of peer-reviewed data on it. And also, right, we know transplants are really expensive. And that particular plan that the employer purchased excluded some transplants. And I will never forget having to tell the patient that their coverage didn't include the transplant that they needed. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, because, right, somebody needs a transplant. Without that organ, they're going to die. But what I will tell you is what I learned is that there were lots of community resources that I could connect that patient with. And ultimately, they ended up getting their transplants, and they ended up ultimately, right, once they had their transplant, living a fairly healthy life. And so what I think I learned and probably taught me the most was don't ever give up. And if you talk to anybody that has worked with me, either on my team or at my level or even above me, will tell you that there's one thing. If there's one thing that I am, it's persistent. I do not ever stop. Just because you tell me no, right? Now, let's be really clear. We're talking about patients and providers here. That when you tell me no, we can't do it because it's too hard, I'll figure out a way around it. And I'll keep going until we solve it. And I think that's what I learned, is just because it felt like it was the end, it wasn't the end. I could do more and help that patient.
Thank you. And just one other question that I had, Shelly, is how, with your switching of jobs, how did you know when it was time to maybe change or pivot your career to a new path over the years?
So that is a much harder question. So I will tell you that so it's been about a 60-day sort of investigation for me in terms of this new role. And I wasn't looking, I think I mentioned that in the beginning. I was really happy with where I'm at right now. I feel, right, I shared with you that as a clinician, many of you probably feel the same way. I need to feel like I'm making a difference in people's lives. And every single night when I put my head on that pillow, I feel like the work that I do positively impacts patients' lives. And so I felt really fulfilled. And when the CEO of Rubicon Founders, which is the private equity firm, amongst several other investors, came looking for me, they were like, hey, we want to talk to you. And I was like, I don't have time for this. I'm a busy lady. Don't you know that? But I talked to them because I guess I figured, what do I have to lose? And as I talked to them, and again, it's been a journey. It's probably been about 45 days that I've really spent a lot of time reflecting. And I think where I got to, and just a funny story, is I was walking out the door for the interview in Nashville. So I was getting ready. My husband was taking me to the airport. My 77-year-old mother lives with me as well. And I didn't include a picture of her, but you wouldn't believe she's 77. She's an amazing woman. And she said to me, it seems like a lot of trouble for something you don't want. And I just kind of rolled my eyes and was like, yeah, whatever. But throughout that process, I started to reflect on, do I really feel alive, right? Do I feel like I'm innovating? Am I at a maintenance phase, or am I still building? And I will tell you that on the way home from that interview on the airplane, I was texting with my brother-in-law, and he said the most incredible thing to me, because I said, and my brother-in-law, by the way, graduated from UNLV as well and got his master's degree online at Michigan State, because he saw me, he saw what a huge fan and what an incredible opportunity I had at Michigan State. And he decided he wanted the same thing. So he got his master's degree at Michigan State, still living in Las Vegas. But he said to me, he said, Shelly, there are some people who are good at building the empire, and some people who are good at managing the empire. You seem to be really good at building the empire and motivated, and really bored managing the empire. Go find your passion and build that thing. And that was pivotal to where I was at, because what I had recognized is that while I was happy and fulfilled, I was really no longer innovating to the good degree that gives me passion. So it wasn't an instantaneous. And I will tell you what my leader said, what the CEO of Rubicon Founders said to me. I said, how did you find me? And that's a whole nother story. But he said to me, Shelly, if you would have taken 30 seconds to pull your head out of the work and to look around you, you would have learned that there are very few people with your skill and expertise, and you would have recognized how in demand your skills are in the marketplace.
Thank you so much. I think that is the end of the questions. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. Thank you so much for spending that time. What a great journey, and I loved your analysis of the business and the nursing and putting those together. Your journey has been really inspirational, I'm sure, to people who have listened or people you've touched on your career. And personally, I'd like to say thank you for presenting today.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been awesome.
Yeah. And oh, I'm sorry, if you do have questions, or if you need any more information on this, please email the Assistant Director of Communication and Alumni Relations, Marco Schmizzi, at schimiz7@msu.edu, and he will pass that question along. So thank you all today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.